You spent weeks preparing for that job, the research, the interviews, the negotiation. You showed up on day one ready to prove yourself. What nobody told you is that the company spent those same weeks preparing something else entirely, a file, with your name on it, and columns you will never see. Your first 90 days were never about helping you land. They were about helping them decide. And by the time most people realized they were being evaluated, the evaluation is already over. Here's what that actually looks like. Marcus got the offer on a Wednesday, $41,000 above what he'd been making, a title he'd been working toward for 3 years. He gave his notice that same afternoon. The onboarding packet arrived 4 days later. 53 pages. He read every single one. His first day was a Monday in February. He got there 11 minutes early. His new manager, a focused woman named Sandra, spent 45 minutes walking him through what she called the integration timeline. 90 days. That was the phrase she kept using. 90 days to get oriented. 90 days to understand the culture. 90 days before he'd start making real contributions. She said it like she was giving him a gift. He nodded and took notes on everything. What Marcus didn't see was what Sandra did after he left the room. She walked back to her office, opened her laptop, and pulled up a file she'd been using for 6 years. Every new hire she'd ever managed had a row in it. Marcus was the 4th entry this year. Next to his name were columns he would never know existed: 30-day read, 60-day read, 90-day decision, and a final column labeled simply outcome. She typed 2 words in his 30-day column: to watch. Then she closed the file and went to her next meeting. Here's what most people never understand about the 90-day period. It wasn't designed for your benefit. It's not a runway. It's not a warmth gesture. It exists in nearly every major organization in roughly the same form for one specific reason. Because 90 days is the ideal window to evaluate someone before the costs of keeping them start to compound. Marcus's benefits hadn't vested. His equity wouldn't trigger until month 6. His severance clause, buried on page 38 of the onboarding packet he'd read so carefully, specified that terminations within the first 90 days required no payout beyond accrued salary. He'd read that paragraph. He just hadn't understood what it meant structurally. The company hadn't given Marcus 90 days to settle in. They'd given themselves 90 days to decide at the lowest possible cost. And during those 90 days, Marcus was doing exactly what every prepared new hire does. He learned the org chart. He attended every optional meeting. He stayed late to be visible. He volunteered for a cross-functional task force nobody else wanted. He sent thoughtful recap emails after every conversation. He thought he was proving he could do the job. Sandra was watching for something else entirely, not whether he could do the job. She assumed he could. That's why they hired him. She was watching whether his judgment matched the environment, whether the way he handled ambiguity signaled confidence or hesitation, whether the questions he asked revealed someone building a real mental model of the organization, or someone waiting to be told what to do next. These 2 things look identical from the outside. Marcus performing readiness and Sandra measuring fit happened in the same meetings, the same hallway conversations, the same email threads. The difference is that Marcus thought the scoreboard was visible. Sandra knew it wasn't. And there's something else experienced managers know that new hires almost never do. The version of you they see in month 1 is a performance. Not a dishonest one, just an elevated one. You're running slightly above your sustainable pace, showing more initiative than you'll maintain long-term, suppressing doubts you'd normally surface. Sandra wasn't measuring the performance. She was calibrating for what the performance was hiding. Marcus had no idea any of this was being recorded. His 30-day check-in lasted 11 minutes. Sandra said he was adjusting well. His 60-day check-in was rescheduled once, then held standing up between meetings. She asked if he had everything he needed. He said yes. She nodded and walked toward the elevator. If Marcus had understood what those check-ins actually were, he would have noticed something. They weren't getting longer. They weren't getting more detailed. The questions weren't deepening. In organizations where a new hire's trajectory is positive, check-ins evolve. They become collaborative. New responsibilities surface. The manager starts pulling you toward things instead of just watching you orient. Marcus's check-ins were flattening. That was the signal. He just didn't know it was a signal. His 90-day review happened in a small office on a Thursday afternoon. Sandra told him he was settling in well. She mentioned that some people take longer than others. She said there was a large project coming up in Q2 and that she'd loop him in when the timing was right. He left that meeting feeling good, bought coffee for the team the next morning. What he didn't know was that Sandra had already filled in the 90-day decision column. The word she typed was limited. She didn't tell him. She wouldn't. There was no formal meeting, no documented feedback trail, no conversation that looked like a negative review. The evaluation was simply over. The conclusion had been reached the way most 90-day conclusions are reached, quietly, internally, without appeal. 4 months later, 6 months into the job, the Q2 project launched without him. He found out when a colleague sent him a message asking how the kickoff went. Marcus hadn't been in the room, wasn't on the recap email. When he asked Sandra about it, she said the scope had shifted and his piece was already being covered by someone embedded in the project. She said it without looking up from her screen. This is what the 90-day trap looks like once the window has closed. His title stayed exactly the same. His scope was quietly disappearing. The architecture of his role was being disassembled around him, piece by piece, in silence, with no formal conversation he could push back on. Now here's the part that matters. Because this video isn't just about what happened to Marcus, it's about what you can do differently. 2 orientations run simultaneously in your first 90 days. Most people only do one. The first is orientation to the company. Learning the systems, the culture, the vocabulary, the people. This is what every new hire does. This is what the onboarding packet is built for. The second is orientation to the evaluation. Understanding who is watching, what they're watching for, and what a positive trajectory actually looks like inside this specific organization. Kevin was so focused on learning the company that he never once looked at how the company was learning him. Don't make that mistake. Here are the 4 moves that change this. Move 1. In your first week, ask your manager directly what would tell you at 90 days that this is working. Most managers have never been asked this question. The ones who answer are handing you the exact columns in their file. The ones who deflect are telling you something different and equally important. Either way, you now know more than Marcus did. Move 2. Engineer your check-ins. Don't show up and answer questions. Come in with a specific decision you made that week and the reasoning behind it. Ask something that shows you're building a mental model, not waiting for instructions. Check-ins you shape read completely differently than ones you just attend. Move 3. By day 30, secure one senior stakeholder who knows your name and connects it to something specific, not by going around your manager, by doing work visible enough that someone above them notices it organically. One person at that level who has a real impression of you is the most valuable thing you can build in the first month. Move 4. Read the check-in trajectory. If your meetings are getting shorter, flatter, more vague, that is data. Act on it early. Ask your manager for a more structured touchpoint. Frame it as wanting to make sure you're aligned on priorities. This either resets the trajectory or tells you clearly what you're dealing with before the window closes. The people who move quickly in organizations understand something very early that most people only piece together years too late. The 90-day period is not low stakes. It is compressed permanent stakes. Every interaction is a data point. Every email is a sample. Every handled and mishandled moment is being added to a picture that, once complete, almost never gets reopened. The manager doesn't need to schedule a meeting to deliver the conclusion. The assessment happens continuously, silently, and cumulatively. And by the time most people realize they were being evaluated, the file is already closed. Marcus stayed 22 months, was never brought into a major project. Left on a Friday with a 2-week notice and a farewell message that got 9 reactions. By the time he submitted that resignation, the people who had been watching since February had long since moved on to the next row in the file. Your first 90 days are either happening to you or you're happening to them. The window doesn't stay open. Use it.